Hey everybody, this is Joel with Back Road Builds. So I had a neighbor stop by with this piece of glass and she would like a table made out of it. So we went over a few designs and what we came up with was that she would like a 2-inch overhang on all 4 sides. Mainly straight pieces. What we're going to do is use this 1.5 inch tubing for the corner posts. In between those corner posts, up on the top rail, we'll have the 1x2 rectangular tubing. Down towards the bottom, there'll be the 1x1 square tubing. Now in the end, we're also underneath that 1x2, we're going to put a nice arch underneath there just to give it a little bit of a flare and that, but we're going to work on that later. And we're going to start cutting all these straight pieces first. So we need to measure up this top, get the right dimensions, get those cut, and once that framework is done, then we'll measure and get those arches. So I have the steel pieces cut, all of our straight pieces anyway. What I need to do is clean up all the ends. I've already started on those there. I've got a couple more to do. But I also want to take the time to point out that, as you can see here, you buy steel from somewhere, and whether you pick it up or have it shipped, sometimes it gets rained on and gets some rust. So you're going to want to clean all that off of there too. I had a couple pieces like that, so always read and follow all labels and the owner's manual. So I have all the material cleaned up. I'd like to take a couple minutes and just talk about the measurements that we came up with for the table base. So as you remember, she wanted a 2-inch overhang on all 4 sides, which means this is the narrow end, which was 24 inches wide on the glass. So I made the overall 20 inches wide. Now, my corner posts are 1.5 inches, so these other pieces fit inside. So then I have to take that 20 inches and subtract 3 inches to get the inside measurement to cut those. Now another thing you're going to see me do as I'm building these frames is I'm going to use these 1/4 inch spacers, and the reason they're 1/4 inch is because this piece of tubing, the 1x2 and the 1x1, are 1/2 inch narrower than the 1.5 inch. So when I take and put a spacer underneath each one, that 1/4 inch will actually center those pieces of tubing for me, give me a 1/4 inch on the outside and on the inside, and it just sets the piece back in a little bit, and personally I just think it looks nice to do that. So as you can see, I have the frame together now. One thing I did do was put caps on the ends of the corner tubing here, just because with the glass top, otherwise you'd see down into the tubing. I capped those off. The tubing's 14 gauge material, so I just had some 14 gauge flat stock around that I cut those out of. And then what I typically do for welding is I bump my machine down 1 setting. So I actually set it for the 16 gauge setting to weld these up, because even on the 16 gauge, I'm still getting good penetration into both pieces. It doesn't build up too much material. And if I have a little bit of a gap, it'll kind of help me with that because it's not so hot. It'll help a little bit with the burn through. So I do that, and then I kind of flatten the top, because with that glass tabletop, there's some clear little bumpers that are going to go on top of here when the glass comes on. Those bumpers are thicker than this cap. The next thing we want to do is get to making those arches that we talked about. So I have some pre-cut material. As you can see, it's wider than what the base is. Well, that's because the roller that I have, your first roughly 6 inches is going to be straight before you start to get the bend in it. So I typically add 6 to 7 inches on for my width. Now, if you don't have a roller like I do, what I've done in the past, it gets a little difficult, like on a narrow end like this. But for a wider side like this, you could take a piece of pipe. I always keep various sizes, as you can see around. But if you just need a slight arch, like what we're gonna do in here, I'll probably be coming down maybe around 4 to 5 inches and bringing this up and leaving maybe a 1/2 inch gap here. You could easily clamp this piece down and do that. So what I typically do is I kind of have an idea in my head about how much I want that arch to be, how much of a bend. So I'll run it through a few times till I get close to what I think. So what I do now that everything is rolled is I will take some clamps. I'm just going to eyeball where I think I want this, and I'm going to clamp each end. And then I will just take a hammer and tap the tubing up and down till I have the gap that I want, and I think everything looks nice. Then I'll take measurements and I can transfer those to the other side. I'll mark the tubing, cut the tubing, take the piece that I cut, lay it over the second piece, and then mark and cut that also so they're the same. Then I will come back to the marks that I have left on here, put them in place, tack weld it. I'll do the same to the short sides. If I'm happy with how it all looks, then I'll go back and finish welding. If I'm not happy, it's just tack weld it in. You can break those off, cut them off real easy, move things around a little bit. So we have our coffee table project just about wrapped up. Last thing to do is take this to paint. We'll probably have it powder coated, whatever color she would like. And then for the bottom of these legs, this is going to be going in her living room and it is carpet. I typically purchase some plastic plugs for the bottom of the steel. It'll hold that up. If she does go onto a wood floor, it won't scratch the wood floor with the metal bottom. And then it stops the tubing also from kind of digging into the carpet and cutting there. So I'm really happy with how it turned out. I like the arches. I like the placement of the arches. So we'll get this thing painted, we'll get it back to her, and I'm hoping that she'll get as much enjoyment out of this as I had fun building it.